It's the same thing. So intention is it's the energy that you're proceeding an activity with, right? So what is the energy that I'm proceeding this activity with? What do I want to accomplish? What are my intentions here? And also, if you think about anything you do in life, right? Whether it's appreciated or not appreciated, the fact is, it's like people will always say, yeah, what were your intentions? Like what were you trying to accomplish? What did you want to do? Maybe you didn't accomplish it, but what were your intentions? And oftentimes when people don't accomplish a thing, they're like, well, I was never really clear on it.
Today, I'd like to welcome a very special guest and a friend, Jamil Damji. Jamil, welcome to the show. It's such an honor and a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, Christian, I'm super stoked to be here. I appreciate you giving me the invite, and I love what you're doing here. I think this is such an incredible podcast that you've created, and the message is something that is near and dear to me. I live this in my own world, and so not enough people bridge the world or try to blur the lines of day-to-day life. And they think, okay, my spiritual life is my spiritual life, my work is my work, my family is my family, and I don't think that there should be any separation in that. I think that everything should be just one big process, and your spirituality should bleed into your work, and it should bleed into your family, and vice versa. And so I think this is such a great idea, and I know you're going to do amazing things with it.
Awesome. Yes. And that is exactly why I invited you onto the show today, because before I met you, I watched your show, Triple Digit Flip, and I saw how you incorporated spiritual foundations and spiritual principles into your show. And so I knew that you would be the perfect guest. I have a lot of clients, coaching clients, that say it's too hard to maintain their spiritual practice while they're working. And I want to call them out on that. So today we'll talk about how we do that. But before we get started, let's take a little journey into your experience. How did you find your way to spiritual principles? Were you taught this from when you were a kid, or did something happen that led you to spirituality?
Interesting catalyst for me. So I in my early 20s, and even leading into that, my life goal or my life path had been set out for me by my parents, right? And so they were like, listen, you're going to study really hard, you're going to become a doctor, this is what's going to give you financial freedom in the world, it's going to give you status, you're going to do a lot better than we did, right? You see us, we work 12, sometimes 16-hour days. You barely see your mom and your dad. You don't want that life. You want a better life. And I agreed with them. I thought, they know what they're talking about, and you take your lessons from the people closest to you that you love. And I love my parents dearly, and I thought that advice was sage. And so, I did really well in my undergraduate degree in university, my bachelor's of sciences in physiology. I took the exam for medical school entrance, and I did well on that, but I didn't get into medical school. And it was like traumatic for me. Like it was so traumatic. I almost had a breakdown, right? Because it's like my whole life now was just completely shattered. And a human being is who decided that I couldn't go, right? And they picked my cousin over me. And, I actually, it on like, I not to disparage my cousin at all, right? But like he wasn't the smarter of the two, right? And so the fact that he gets in and I didn't get in, it was just to me it was like, wow, what is this telling me? And so I had like a break, to be as clear and as possible. I had a break, but it was an awakening, right? I had a few days over which I had I cracked open. And you almost think you're going crazy when something like that happens. A lot of people who have been through something like that, they don't know if they are going crazy, if they need to. And for me, like truly, I was on the line, right? I'm like, do I need to go to a hospital or something, or am I okay? But what was happening wasn't it. How I knew I was okay is because what I was hearing, what I was seeing wasn't like you're Jesus or kill the president. Like it was nothing like that, right? It was like it was really opening me, and it was like bliss, and it was showing me the connectivity between everything, and it was illuminating the deceptions that were going on in my mind and in my life. And that was the biggest piece, because I think what really broke me was seeing how fake I was, right? How plastic I was, and how even the things that I said weren't true, even though I thought them to be true. On a If you peeled a layer back, it's like, no, that's not really why you're doing it. And if you peel another layer back, it's like, that's not even really why you're doing it. And then you peel another layer back, and you're like, you're doing it because you feel worthless. And it's like, so you get all of this, right, where you're peeling back these layers of deception, I think is the best word. And it's self-deception, right? It's egoic structure that gives you this sense of importance, and this sense of separation, and this sense of that like, Jamil is important, and to a degree that I'm more important than others, or that what I need is supersedes other people, and that this connectivity, this lack of separation between us, which is a spiritual truth. But in reality, when you're looking at it, you're like, no, I'm me and you're you. I don't know what you're going through. You don't know what I'm going through. And we're not affecting each other yet. In reality, and on a quantum level, even scientifically in physics, that's not true. We're like this big energy soup. And so, when you understand that, right, it for me, there was a stepping stone there. So I have a breakdown. I awaken, and then I go through one of the worst periods of my life. Like it was devastating. I got into trouble with the law. All of my friends weren't my friends. Like it was all like I was just living in this big facade. And then finally, I step out. I step out of that, and time goes by. This is not an overnight thing. This is like over a couple of years now. I'm like feeling my way around things, and I'm starting to understand that there's something that I have inside of me that is of a higher nature, like a greater accord, I guess. A greater version of me lives in me, and it's not just the meat sack. It's not just the random 70,000 thoughts that go in and out. It's like a subtlety, but it's true. And so I find my way into real estate investing in this period of time, right? And I economically change my whole trajectory for a short period of time. This is like 2002 to 2006. I make a bunch of money in real estate, and I'm like, oh my God, like, yeah, I'm in my prime. I'm in my truth. Like, but even then really wasn't, because I was still very self-centered. I was still very greedy. I was still very, it's all about me. And if I win, I win. And if other people lose, then all good. Right. And so again, I was still working from the very lack-minded, very scarcity centered focus. And so that led to my life being completely unprepared for the 2008 financial crisis, which took me from a millionaire to negative millions in months, right? And so I was humbled very, very, at a very deep level to my core. I was like, wow, like, okay, I just rebuilt this whole ego, and that just got, somebody popped it. So I'm now again fumbling in life, right? I decide, hey, well, this real estate thing didn't work out. I'm gonna go and become a comedian. One of the things about comedy, which is really interesting, is there's a lot of comedy and truth, right? And that's why people laugh when they hear the truth. A lot of times it's like when you hear a really funny joke, you're like, that's so true. And it makes you laugh because it bypasses the BS that lives in us, right? So, and it's like a trap door to funny is truth. And so I'm in that world, and that's also, again, I'm starting now to get more spiritually attuned. I begin looking and reading material, like Eckhart Tolle became somebody that I was really interested in, and I start getting into the world of self-development, personal development, but I wasn't quite meditating yet. I hadn't reached that precipice. And but what did happen was I realized I couldn't make it as a comedian, but this real estate thing that is burning in me is calling me back. And so on my birthday, 12, 12, 12, which is like my angel number, right? My birthday is December 12th. And on the year December 12th, 2012, I pack up my stuff in Los Angeles and I move my butt over to Phoenix. And you've seen what's happened to me in Phoenix. My life completely exploded, right? And so I'm now in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm working in real estate. The wholesaling is clicking in a way that's almost scary, right? Like it's like I don't even have to try. Deals happen for me so easily, and I attract, and I'm a magnet for people. And I read this book, and it's called "You Are a Badass" by Jen Sincero. And I mean, it's look, that book is not a piece of literary. It's not a literary masterpiece by any means. She swears a lot in it. It's like it's kind of it's mediocre at best, but it changed my life because in the book she says every person who I know that's successful in one way, shape, or form meditates. She's like, I don't know how it works, and I don't know why it works, but it works. And so do it. That's it. That's like basically her explanation, right? And I'm in a period of my life right now where I'm doing well financially, getting better. I'm, about to get married to Natalie and have get my family started. And so like, that's all about to happen. But I'm not in a good place. I'm drinking every day. I'm addicted to painkillers. I'm in like, I'm still not in this like high vibrational state, right? I'm hungover every morning. It's tough. But one day I just say, hey, you know what? Hangover or not, I'm going to wake up. I'm going to close my eyes for 5 minutes and I'm going to do this thing she says. Right. And Christina, I tell you, that right there was where it all popped for me. Right. Cause I realized how peaceful and how incredible it felt to get into the silence. And then my meditation practice has amplified my world into, the stratosphere. So that's the long version of it, but that's how it all happened.
Thank you so much I felt like I was on a journey with you through your journey. And I just want to highlight how you brought out that there were points where you were lower and then you started to go up and then you were still, there was another crashing point. And then, so the journey is not always a straight incline. It's very rocky and very bumpy.
Life is a wave. If you don't realize that life is life is a wave function. Look at a wave, guys. If you haven't ever seen what a wave looks like, it's like this. Okay. That is life. And you will have, and the wave function of matter, because everything in the world is light and has both particle and wave characteristics. It's also a quantum fact. You guys can look that up. I'm not making things up. So everything is a wave and your life is a wave. And that means that you're going to have periods of immense joy and happiness, and then you're gonna get kicked sometimes, and you're gonna be in a valley, and that's okay, right? I think what is really important is that you never lose your true nature, regardless of if you're on a high or if you're on the low. You got to understand and see that even in the low times, that everything is happening for you, and everything is happening in a way that is giving you a reflection of things you need to work on, things that you could do better, things that are lessons that you're still needing to find insights into. And so I think it's just this really incredible truth that I think the Buddhist philosophy is this idea of impermanence. Like nothing is going to stay the same. So please, if you're on this thinking that, man, I just want this stable life, I just want to do this so I can get stable. Listen, life is going to get really good. It's going to get incredibly good, but stable, I don't know.
Right. I love how you point that out because the contrast is so important to add to that. It's like we can't actually know what stable feels like if we don't know what unstable feels like. So if you want stable, be prepared to experience some instability so that you can appreciate the stable. And I love how the book that you mentioned, I love how simple it was. Like spirituality to me, we complicate it. But one simple line was that all the successful people meditate. And that was enough for you to get started with meditation. So I'm really curious. I have a lot of clients, a lot of people come to me and they say, I can't stop my mind. Like, I'm curious, how did you start your meditation practice and how did that meditation practice grow?
Yeah. So, hey, whoever says that to you, you're not special. Okay. That's everybody. We all have the same like monkey mind, 70,000 thoughts. I think science has said float through our head in a day. So that's a lot of stuff, right? It's like you think about the traffic of 70,000 things floating around, in that in the highway of your brain. It's busy. It's rush hour always. It's rush hour always. So if you look at it from that perspective, right? It's such a cop out to say I can't meditate, I can't stop my mind, I can't stop it. It's like, no, that's everyone. So how did I start? I started with a hangover and Headspace. So I downloaded the app Headspace because it was the first app that popped up on the App Store that had good reviews and lots of ratings, and it was relatively cheap. And so I download Headspace and I do the first 5 minutes, and then he escalates you to 10, and then he escalates you to 15, and it's just like this really gradual increase in duration and intensity, and I loved it. Like, it was so meaningful and peaceful to me. And it's interesting because even back then, and this is something that people look, maybe you know who I am and you follow me in the real estate world, or you have no clue who I am, and this is not going to mean anything to you. But when I was first starting, I would have a mantra in my head, and the mantra in my head was, I want to be the greatest wholesaler in America. I want to be the biggest and greatest wholesaler in America. And that was it. That was my mantra. And I kid you not, guys, within a matter of like 4 years, that reality happened. And my company is the largest wholesale operation in the country. We're franchised in nearly 100 markets. I've got thousands of employees across the country. It's like this is my dream, right? It was bigger and better than I would have ever imagined. But having that focus and allowing myself to really let that reality find me, which is how it happens. You've got to take action and you got to do things. But something really interesting happens when you do enter this space of finding alignment and getting into your higher purpose and what is your journey and reason for being here. People also, they complicate. They're like, well, how could real estate be your purpose? Listen, you could be a custodian, and that could be a dharma, that could be a life purpose because of how you do it, right? And who you affect, and what the quality of workmanship and quality of awareness and presence you bring into your work. And so I please don't have this idea in your head that what you do isn't worthy enough of it being a spiritual practice and it being a higher calling or a higher life. Like, there is no such thing as a job or as a thing that is unnecessary or unworthy, right? And so you've got to know that. And if you can, and so for me in real estate, it's like some people be like, oh, how could you think that there's anything congruent between buying and selling houses and profiting in that regard and spirituality? How could there not be? Right? Because I see that the people that I work with, I help. I see that the people I train and teach how to do this, I help. I see that when I solve problems for real estate agents, or I bring liquidity to a seller who has a hoarder problem and couldn't sell their house on an open market, I help. I see that when a buyer buys one of my deals and they go and flip that house and make $50,000, I help. And of course, there's spirituality and a calling in that, right? And so if you're being useful and helping people in the world in one way, shape, or form in your job, then what you're doing is spiritual.
There's so much that you mentioned that I don't know which thread to go down, but I love how you just brought in the purpose and alignment. And what I teach to my clients often is that first and foremost, preceding anything that we're doing for work or in life, our purpose, our underlying purpose is to be present and to be in the experience of what is happening right now. So
Right.
we can apply that to real estate or to being a custodian or a teacher or working at McDonald's or wherever. And I'm curious because in your journey, you had mentioned that life was planned for you. You were supposed to go to medical school and be a doctor. Where was it in your journey that you found that alignment? I know you had a little bit of a breakdown and then you got into real estate. How did you discover what was in alignment for you specifically?
Well, when you are aligned, it's not hard. I think that's it. It's like it happens in a way that's just like, for instance, okay, I moved to Los Angeles to be a comedian, okay, and that to me was going against the grain. Not that learning comedy wasn't in alignment, because I'll tell you what, had I not gone to LA and learned comedy, I wouldn't have been as successful in wholesaling, because I bring so much comedy to the way I teach, to my work, to my YouTube, to my ads, that comedy and me and real estate have become sort of synonymous, right, in this space. And so I had to go and do that in order to be as entertaining for people to watch and to follow now. So comedy had to happen, but finding money in comedy would never work for me. Like, it was just like it was the biggest, hardest grind. And I think that if I'd had some success financially in it, I probably would have stuck to it, right? But I just kept, it would always fall through my hands, right? Like, I remember I was about to do this one really, really big shoot for Funny or Die. That's Will Ferrell's comedy website. And Coolio, right? We wrote this really funny sketch about this party that never ends, because, a West Coast party don't stop, right? And so Coolio is supposed to be in this sketch, and I'm supposed to put this thing together and produce Coolio for this sketch. I have a connection to him through a friend. Well, the day of the sketch that we're supposed to shoot, Coolio is supposed to be flying from Las Vegas to Los Angeles, and runs away at the airport. Right? He was struggling at the time. Rest his soul now. I know he's passed on just recently, and we love you, Coolio. But at the time, he was struggling in addiction, and for some reason, or somebody that he knew that was in that world with him, caught his attention, and instead of getting on a plane, he ran away and got into a car and disappeared. And it was like, so, okay, that doesn't even work out for me. It's like, God, what is happening here? Why are you always just throwing eggs at me, and like this whole world just keeps splitting? Yet, I look at Phoenix, Arizona while I'm living in LA, and I'm looking at property over there, and I'm tinkering. I'm not even trying. I'm tinkering around with like putting things under contract, and I get these 2 short sales under contract, and I'm like, oh, I got accepted contracts here. Okay, well, what do I do now? Well, I'm just going to go into Craigslist and I'm going to write an ad. And that's what I did. I go into Craigslist and I write an ad. And I'm not kidding you. In 15 minutes, I sold both contracts. I make $18,000. And I'm like, what is that? I'm over here in LA beating my head against the wall, trying to be a successful paid comedian. And like, things just won't work out for me yet. I look at real estate. And it throws me money. Right. I say the word real estate and money shows up. Like, it feels that aligned. It's like, it's not a grind. It is a calling. And so I stepped into that. I was like, that's when I knew there was a moment, right? Because I was engaged to Nat. Nat had a daughter that she was bringing in to live with me and her in LA at the time. But then I changed it to Phoenix. And I was like, how am I going to support these girls? Right. And not only that, but I've got another daughter that I have in my previous relationship that I have to support as well. Right. And so, like, how am I going to support all these people? Not also, on top of that, I had financially ruined my family and myself prior to this because of everything that happened in 2008. It's like, not only how am I going to repay everybody, how am I going to make good on the things that I lost of people's, right? And so I made the decision. I said, I got to choose what is easier and what is aligning for me, and what is going to pay me because I had to choose what was good for the service of other people. Right. And it wasn't just serving myself. Serving myself would have been, well, Jamil, you want to get rich and famous, so stay in LA and become a comedian. right? Um, but then what happens? I moved to Phoenix and I get rich and famous, but it's not through the way that I thought it was going to happen. It happened because it was when what I was doing in alignment. So it's like, dude, like what a crazy life that these kinds of things find these ways to come in and surprise the heck out of you. And then you see the ultimate comedian is God.
Yeah. I love that. Yes, the ultimate comedian is God. Yes, alignment. Alignment is everything. It's what I teach, and in my own like journey since I lost my job in December and have what that did for me is it made me commit to only living in alignment. Like if it wasn't in alignment, it was just a no. And I just want to say that that was a very scary process, actually, because I was so used to, providing for my kids and just doing whatever it took to make sure that they were taken care of and not actually trusting the universe, God, or the divine plan. So I love that this is a perfect segue to entrepreneurship and how you bring your spiritual practices into your business. So my curiosity now is what spiritual foundations do you find are necessary to expand and flourish in your business?
Great question, right? So with respect to your energy, okay, because I look at this scientifically. I'm a science guy, right? So let's because some people are going to get turned off and maybe they're thinking like, I don't maybe believe in God, right? Or I don't believe in this like intelligent life or this intelligent, benevolent creator that supposedly has all our backs, and then there's kids getting stolen out there and sold, right? Like how does that work? And all these like so many inconsistencies and things that people will say like there's just no proof that this intelligence exists.
Right.
Let's forget that. Let's go on it from a scientific perspective. Okay, let's look at it from a perspective of energy. Let's look at it from a perspective of science, because that is we can experiment and we can get results, and then we can track results, and then we can see what happens. So I look at it from the scientific perspective first, and then I looked at all these equations in science and physics and energy, right? And I'm like, well, first and foremost, you look at Einstein's theory of relativity. It's like energy is equal to mass times the speed of light squared. Hold on a second. When the heck did energy be equal to mass? How does energy even have a mass? Then you understand that there's these concepts of how physical reality has both light properties and particle properties. So everything that you look at right now is existing either as a particle or a wave. And typically it'll be 50-50 particle and 50-50 wave. I'm sorry if I'm losing anybody here, but look up the observer effect, and that's what I'm talking about, okay? But what science has determined is that when nobody's looking at the experiment, where they would shoot this photon into these double slits, right? And they would measure how many times was the photon did it become a particle, and how many times did it stay a wave, right? And like anything that has two possibilities, like flipping a coin, statistically, what's the result? 50-50. Would you agree? Right? You flip a coin enough times, it's going to be 50-50. That's what happens. They line up like that. The universe lines up like that. And then what we found was that no, it's only 50-50 if no one's looking at it. But the moment that a scientist or somebody comes and observes it and looks at it and tracks it, 100% of the time it's a particle. So that tells you that consciousness, that observing, that awareness is actually creating the fabric of reality, which if that doesn't blow your mind right now, I don't know what else would, right? So if you can see that your consciousness is actually part and parcel, is conspiring to create physical reality, right? It's conspiring with all the other consciousnesses out there to create physical reality. Well, then maybe, just maybe, you can manipulate that energy. And if you can manipulate that energy, and we know through thermodynamics, Newton's second law is energy cannot be created or destroyed. It is only transferred from one form to another. Then I can say that I can take the energy of my thought, I can take the energy of my emotions, I can take that energy and I can harness it into an energy that is actually physical, and I can create from that place. And so, that's one of the things that I bring into my world and into my office is I tell folks, guys, don't limit yourselves. You've got to get so far ahead in your head of what you want to accomplish, because that's how you're going to create it in reality. And we've been seeing examples of this everywhere. If you look at sports, for example, modern medicine right now, sports doctors, sports physiologists, sports physicians, they will work with top level basketball players, football players, all of them. And they will do visualization exercises with them pre-game, post-game, preseason. And what they'll find is that the stimulus in the muscles and the muscle development and the formation of the neurons, the motor neurons that will help you do an activity, like just to say, for instance, dribbling a ball, right? You need specific motor neurons in order to do that out, like in the right way. And they develop over time. And you would understand that by practicing dribbling the ball, you would be creating those motor neurons in more and more density, and it would make you better and better, and get to a point where dribbling the ball became unconscious. Does that make sense? So now you're not consciously dribbling the ball. You're so good at it, you're just dribbling, and you're not even aware you're doing it, right? And if you guys have ever, I'll give you an example of what something like that is. Think about the last time you drove to your office. And if you were actually even thinking about where the hell you were, if you were lost, and if you just left your house and got to your office and have no idea how you got there, that's what I'm talking about. That's unconscious competence. Okay. So what they've realized in sports medicine is that if they can get these high level figures to visualize the game, visualize their process, visualize how they're going to defeat their opponent, visualize winning the game, that the likelihood of that occurrence happening dramatically changes in its favor. And that's measurable, right? And so when you see that these phenomena are occurring and that they're being measured and that we don't have scientific explanation for it, it really just changes the framework of what you're doing. And it allows you to then realize that your job, your work, you should actually turn into more, you should gamify it, right? Try to turn it into more of an experimental process of, hey, I'm going to really try to create more in this. I'm going to try to be more active in my, day-to-day, whether it be, your digital marketing, right? Or you're doing YouTube or whatever it is, like to be more intentional in it, to put your own spirit, put your mind into these things, put your emotions into these things, and then watch what ends up happening and watch the result that you will create. It'll be so much bigger, so much more, so much richer than if you were doing it unconsciously or unpresent, right? So like, and again, just an example, the last time that you may have had a family dinner, if you have a couple of kids that sat at the table and the entire time they just were on their phone, right? If everybody was kind of, in a TikTok hole and you all eating together, but no one's really talking, no one's looking at each other, everybody's in their phones, everybody's, distracted, versus, hey guys, we're leaving our phones away from the table and we're going to eat dinner together and we're all just going to have a conversation. How much more rich would that dinner be? Right? And so that's truly how you want to approach your work. And so back to your question, how do I incorporate it into my job? It's like, it has to be my job. It's like, I have to be so present. I have to be so here that I need to bring all my energy into this moment. Even sitting in here talking to you, I have to be so focused and present in this conversation so that the words that I'm saying will actually resonate to the person who's listening to this. And it'll hit them in a way that's not physical. It's energetic.
Yeah.
And we do that in everything. We do that from coaching. I do that from my wholesale business. I do that from my YouTube content. I do that in everything. And people who do know me, you'll know, even before I start a live stream on my YouTube channel, I'll pray. And there'll be thousands of people on that live with me. And I get all kinds of shit for it. But I don't care.
It was that prayer, though, that was the indicator for me that I knew you and I spoke the same language. So in addition to that, you mentioned intention. And that was also when I was watching your show, Triple Digit Flip, and I saw you and Pace Morby putting intentions on the walls before you painted. I just felt a connection to both of you guys and to your show. I'd love it if you could talk about the power of intention.
Absolutely. Well, intention is being purposeful, right? And it's putting energy in a specific direction for a specific purpose. And I think for me, the first time I really felt it physically, right, was in my own home that I built here. So when I was building my house, I did this. I brought my wife and my two kids over here, and we got Sharpies. And when they were framing everything up, we came in and we wrote intentions on in the beams, right? We put our intentions for how we wanted to live, how we wanted to feel, how we wanted to evolve and grow, and some of the things that we wanted. We put them in the walls, right? And people will tell you, when you come into my home, it is a completely different feeling than another structure. It's like it. And here's an example of how people can understand how a room can feel different. You ever walk into a room after people have fought, and you ever know how it just, you can touch it, you can touch the tension. And not just by looking at people's faces, forget that. You can just sense it. It's thicker. There's more density in the room, right? It's a lower frequency in the room. And so like, you can literally it's like, ugh, what is this? Right. And so it's the same thing. So intention is it's the energy that you're proceeding an activity with, right? So what is the energy that I'm proceeding this activity with? What do I want to accomplish? What are my intentions here? And also, if you think about anything you do in life, right, whether it's appreciated or not appreciated, the fact is, it's like people will always say, yeah, what were your intentions? Like, what were you trying to accomplish? What did you want to do? Maybe you didn't accomplish it, but what were your intentions? And oftentimes when people don't accomplish a thing, they're like, well, I was never really clear on it. I never really had defined why I was doing what I'm doing. And so for any listener right now that may be struggling, or say you're one of those people that has started a lot of things but never really finished any of them, but you've got good ideas, that you feel that you deserve more and that you want more out of life, and it's just been difficult for you to gain traction, right? That's been the difficult part. That doesn't make you bad. That doesn't make you unfit for this. That absolutely is the opposite. It's the exact opposite of that. What it shows you that is you're lacking the intention. You're lacking getting clear. And when you have a clear intention and you focus a clear intention in a specific direction, you have preceded that with a very powerful energy. And that energy now is kind of guiding your pathway, and it'll open up doors, and it'll be an attractive force. And it's literally your beacon, right? If you think of it as human beings, we emit so much electromagnetism out of our bodies from our hearts and our brains. It's this crazy amount of electromagnetic frequency that we emit. And if you think about that as well, okay, from your heart and your brain are emitting these frequencies, right? Well, why? This is your heart centers where you're feeling, and then your brain is where you're processing, right? And so, of course, it's going to create electromagnetic frequency. Now, if that frequency is high, guess what? It is attracting. And this is another scientific thing out there, right? Like attracts like. The whole Paula Abdul song, the opposites attracting, I think that was like for toxic folks.
Yeah,
like if you like
toxicity, heal wounds.
Yeah, if you're like, I think that's just for people who are like, well, I hate my husband, but I need a song to dance to. Okay, great. Well, I'm glad that this whole opposites attract thing is like what, but it's not really like that, guys. Things that resonate, they attract each other. Things that are alike each other attract each other and dissolve one another. And that's true resonance, right? And so that's the process. That's the piece that I believe happens when you put intention out there, is it's preceding you. And like pendulums, have you ever seen pendulums synchronize before?
Yes.
I
deal with them often. Yeah.
It's the craziest thing. And you guys could Google it on YouTube, or go to YouTube and just write pendulum synchronization, and you'll see a video that is going to blow your mind. They have like 10 pendulums, and they'll start one and then another. And in time, they're all entrained and doing the same thing. Well, I call the first pendulum your intention. So if you're trying to get there, start there, because it's going to get all the other things in line. And that's going to be your thoughts, your attitudes, your feelings, your energy for action. So the first pendulum is the intention. If you put that out first, it'll start entraining the pieces behind it so that everything's in sync.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I love how much science you're bringing into this conversation. I didn't know that you were so into the scientific laws of how the earth and time and space and energy works. So thank you so much for that. I love setting intentions. For me, it's like what you said, it's like the grounding cord. And once I set an intention, all my decision making becomes, does this contribute to my intention or not? So thank you so much for that, Jamil. I know we've been talking for quite a bit now. Is there anything else that you would like to share?
Well, one of the things that I think people out there who might be listening to this and are intrigued, but maybe still skeptical, I want to give you one last scientific thing to think about. Right. And this is just like the beginning of everything. Right. And that, in science, they say that everything happened from the Big Bang. And I believe in that too. I think the Big Bang happened. Right. I think that's it. They've kind of proven that. So Big Bang was a big explosion. Right. Okay. So for anybody who's ever watched an explosion happen, I've watched explosions on TV. I've watched explosions on the internet. And I'll tell you that every one of them have the exact same thing happen. Chaos. Okay. Something explodes, and all that happens after that explosion is chaos. It's just chaos. Everything's everywhere. Nothing's ordered. Nothing makes sense. It's just this chaos. So the biggest explosion of the history of time, okay, happens, and everything gets more ordered. Everything gets timed. Everything becomes perfectly mathematically synced up. Give me a break. Give me a break. There's no chance. There's no chance for that unless there's intelligence behind it. So, if you're still sitting there and you're like, I don't have proof, I hope that at least opens your thoughts to how the heck does that work?
I love that perspective. Thank you so much. I recently saw a post on Facebook that said something about, if you still believe in atheism, how do you explain divine perfection and divine order? Who created that? Who was responsible for that? So thank you so much, Jamil. I have 3 questions that I ask all my guests. The first question is, how would you define God?
Oh, I think, and I'm probably going to catch a lot of crap for this, is I would define it as you, honey. I define it as me. I think we all are in a way, a piece of that divinity of the creator. And it's the creator knowing it's knowing itself as Christina. It's the creator knowing itself as Jamil. It's the creator knowing itself as this candle. It's the creator knowing itself as my dogs. It's the creator knowing itself in its creation. And so how do I define God? It's all of it, good and bad.
Thank you. The next question is, what would you say is the purpose of life?
To learn. I think we're here to learn, wake up, and walk each other home.
And the final question is, if you could take one piece of wisdom that you have now and offer it to a younger version of yourself, what would that one piece of wisdom be?
Oh, it's 100%. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. 1000%. Because I questioned it so many times, and I was always just wondering, like, did I take the right turn? Did I go off somewhere? Like, why do I feel so lost? And then you realize you're not lost. You're on an adventure.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. Jamil, how do people find you?
You can find me on my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Jamil Damji. You can find me at jdamji on Instagram, and send me a DM. I would love to hear from you. I love talking about this stuff. I am, constantly going live on my YouTube channel. I put out all kinds of content, And some of it is about stuff like this, and some of it is about real estate, and some of it's about both this and real estate. But it is my passion. It's what my life is, and I truly feel that I am here to kind of mesh that world of entrepreneurship, of a spiritual awakening, and living your purpose all in one.
Well, thank you so much again. I will be sure to include all of your links in the description of this show so people can find you easily. And again, thank you for taking the time today to have this conversation. Thank you for being so heart-centered and living out your passion. And not only that, but teaching others how to navigate in this world and how to follow their passions as well. I really appreciate you and your time. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you back, sister. Thank you.
I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.